just it just felt like I didn't have it tonight. And of course you can kind of, oh my God.
Kawhi makes his move. Oh, wow! A major Kawhi light! Oh my goodness!
See that Kawhi dunk? Oh, it's crazy. Man, wow.
I love that. Players, they're just like us. They see a shot like this, and man, Kawhi and PG are locked in, have that series tied with the Jazz. We'll talk about what changed for them. And the Hawks are flying high after tying their series with the Sixers. Do you believe in the ATL? Superstars collided in Game 5 tonight. KD versus Giannis. Who is under more pressure? We'll discuss. So open your eyes and enjoy the show, because the Jump starts now. That's the music you want on a Tuesday. Welcome to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, thrilled to be joined by 8-time All-Star, future Hall of Famer, Mr. Vince Carter. Our fabulous NBA and WNBA analyst Monica McNutt is going to join us a little bit later in the show. We also have big news out of Brooklyn today. James Harden looks like he's going to give it a go in that pivotal Game 5. So, Vince, a lot to talk about. Welcome today. First, though, let's get to what happened in Atlanta. Constructing a winning NBA team is sort of like putting together a show-stopping meal. There are a lot of different ways to go about it. If you're historically a glamour franchise, maybe you have the resources to just go out and grab some lobster and caviar. If you're not, maybe you have to grow the ingredients at home yourself. Either way, once you get the food on the stove, it all comes down to the same thing. When the lights are the brightest, when the world is watching and everything is on the line, can you cook? The Atlanta Hawks keep proving their answer is a bona fide yes. Not only did they walk into Madison Square Garden in the first round and fillet a Knicks team carrying the momentum of all of New York City, they are now sitting just 2 wins away from the Eastern Conference Finals, thanks to last night's thrill ride of a win over the Sixers that tied that series at 2 apiece. And yes, a lot of what happens next here will depend on the health of Joel Embiid's knee, and we'll get to that in a moment. But let's not pretend the Hawks are just bystanders here. Atlanta was down 18 points near the end of the first half last night, and no one would have blinked twice if the team had just acquiesced. This is still a young group. Philadelphia is the #1 seed, led by a championship coach and 2 perennial All-Stars, and certainly the favorite in this matchup. But the Hawks did not acquiesce. The Hawks dug in, handily winning the third quarter to cut the Sixers' lead to 2, thanks to some dramatic and terrific two-way play from John Collins, and of course, a push from Trae Young, who continues to show he's not just sizzle, but strength as he fights through a shoulder injury. I loved this sequence with the two of them here in the fourth quarter. Collins hustling for a rebound, gives the ball to Trae, who makes, after the drive, this pass. I mean, come on. JC then pays it off with the triple. Young actually assisted or scored on the Hawks' final 15 points. And after the game, he talked about exactly the kind of environment, talk, and attitude that has exemplified this Atlanta team.
I mean, we've been fighting, all year. We've been fighting all year, and this team never gives up. We, no matter what the score is throughout the game, we know it's a long game. The NBA is a long game, and it's a 48-minute game. And for us, we just stay level-headed throughout the whole game. Every team's going to make runs, and so for us, I love the way we fight.
Now, while the Hawks were making runs, the Sixers were trying to figure out what was going on with their star. Joel Embiid took a mysterious, not actually that mysterious, trip to the locker room in the first half. And by the second half, it was clear he was having significant trouble with the knee injury that has been hounding him all series. He went an astounding over 12 from the floor during that stretch. No missed basket more costly than the one with just under 10 seconds left, a point-blank layup that Embiid could, well, not lay up. Afterward, Joel said, quote, "I just didn't have lift," adding that not being able to jump for obvious reasons, it's tough. We don't know exactly how Embiid's health will go from here. The injury is a partially torn meniscus, and while honestly shouldn't be able to play well on it at all, he has somehow still managed to have some huge games in this series, and maybe he will be able to come up with another one when things shift back to Philadelphia for Wednesday's Game 5. Of course, the Hawks will be ready for that one too. As we saw last night, this is a team that knows how to take a meal that is simmering on the stove and turn it up to a full boil. You know what? You can keep your lobster and caviar. There's some good old-fashioned Southern cooking. And as you can see, it'll do just fine. So Vince, I'm supposed to ask you, since this is now a best of 3, do you believe in Atlanta? But Vince Carter, I know you believe in Atlanta. So tell me why you think that Atlanta can win this series.
I believe in Atlanta. Obviously, it's all based around Joel Embiid and his injury, because if we look what he did in the first 3 games, he was dominant. He was beating double team, single coverage, whatever he wanted. And even in the first half of Game 4, he was doing what he wanted. And then the second half, things changed a little bit, and the Hawks were able to play Joel single coverage, and they got to the shooters, and that allowed them to close out on Tobias Harris and to close out on Curry, and that allowed them to just take over the game or make the game easier for Joel Embiid, and you can see their confidence growing. But we have to give a shout out to John Collins, because what he did in the third quarter helped the Hawks get back into the game, and then, of course, Trey took over in the fourth.
I want to take advantage of the fact that you played on this team, Vince. So give us inside the locker room here, especially with John Collins, because we've talked about Trey plenty. He has been just a supernova this playoffs. John Collins' development has been so promising, really, since his rookie year, but it's had stops and starts. What did you see of him when you played with him, and what are you seeing how that all comes to fruition in a game like last night?
Well, first off, I mean, he's just flying under the radar this year, and he's playing great basketball. I remember walking in the door and John just like, hey, let's get it. Let's learn. I want to get better. And he wants to get better, and he wants to learn. And we just worked on footwork, technique, catching and shooting threes. And look what he's doing as far as his footwork behind the three-point line, which maybe a lot of people don't notice. But you showed that play where Trey made the pass to him for 3 underneath, and he just catches it and shoots it now with confidence. He doesn't hesitate. So what he's done, what Kevin Huerter has done as far as just his maturity and confidence, and Clint Capella defensively and just cleaning up on the glass, scoring. I mean, years ago, did you ever think you could throw the ball to Clint Capella and he's going to get you a bucket and doing what he's doing? And they just believed. I mean, they're playing with a lot of confidence right now, and they should be excited down here in Atlanta.
Well, look, the way they went after Clint, it didn't have immediate payoff. In fact, when they traded for him, Vince, he was hurt, right? So there was a lot of people being like, why exactly did you make this move, especially right now? And guess what? It was for this reason. They knew when this team was finally able to come together, they would get that kind of play. And man, especially since Nick McMillan took over that coaching job, they have been on a rocket ship. You did mention Joel Embiid, of course, as goes him in the rest of this series. 0 for 12 from the field after halftime. And here was Embiid after the game talking a little more about his health. Take a listen.
It happens. Bad game happens. I've been playing well. And, sometimes you just can't control it. Sometimes I thought in the second half a bunch of shots went in and out. There was a couple calls that could have gone, either way. I can do better. I can always be better. But as far as, you being 100%, I don't think that's going to happen, until the year is actually over. I said I just got to go out and, manage it and just deal with it.
So, Vince, that was the worst shooting half of basketball in the last 25 postseasons. Now, you didn't have, I was going to say, your game wasn't quite that rough, but you're on the list, my friend. 0 for 10, right, in 2006. How does Embiid shake this off going forward in the series? What did you do?
For him, early in the game, you want to get fouled, get to the free throw line. And it happened in the second half because he was playing great basketball in the first half. And of course, the injury. And you look at that last play. He said, I couldn't dunk the ball. And I noticed he was just searching for fouls because he couldn't get the lift he wanted. And you can see Clint Capella did a great job of avoiding the contact, and nothing was there. And he just blows the layup. So for Joel, It's as much treatment as you can possibly get, and you give your team everything you have. But he's going to need his supporting cast. Ben Simmons going to have to play better. Obviously, Curry was on fire in the first half, and once they were able to play Joel Embiid single coverage, Hawks were able to get out to the shooter. So they have decisions to make, but I'll feature Joel Embiid early and see what happens.
Yeah, and first of all, it's such a great point you made about the defense. And I do think there's going to be a heart-to-heart between Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid sometime before that next game of, to your point, not hunting for fouls, not having this be in his head. Right, Vince? And
Rachel, I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
And we got to think defensively, if he's not healthy, that's going to be a big factor because early in the first 3 games, the Hawks weren't really able to get the lob play, the pick and roll that they were typically getting. You see him limping there. Now you put Joel Embiid in the pick and roll, and he has a decision to make. Does he play the lob? Does he get up on Trey for the floater? And now that 3-point shot opens up. So I suspect the Hawks will go at him early to test that knee out as well.
So interesting. And I will say, Vince, you've been in that arena obviously a ton. That place was on fire last night.
It was on fire.
Shout out to the Hawks fans. It was awesome.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
Awesome to see. All right, coming up, we're going to talk James Harden because he has now been upgraded to questionable for Game 5 tonight. This is a huge reversal. He was rolled out yesterday. Now he's going to try to give it a go. I will ask Vince what it is like to play hurt in a high-stakes game. First, though, time for our distant replay. This date, 2001. Vince, you've heard of Shaquille O'Neal. He played in the NBA quite some time. Owns many rings and other jewelry.
I mean, we talked about Embiid dominating the post. Just look at that. Just a shoulder check. And then excuse me, sir.
Unstoppable. All defensive teams were announced yesterday. First team featuring Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green, Ben Simmons, Drew Holiday, and Giannis. The second team features Joel Embiid, Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Matisse Thybulle. Monica McNutt, welcome to The Jump. Anyone you wanted to see on there that did not make it?
Thanks for the welcome, Rachel. Hey, VC. Dylan Brooks, anyone? I mean, this is the guy who slowed down Steph significantly, obviously, in that play-in game. But just in general, I mean, he has the rep of never backing down from a good defensive matchup. I'm going to assume the fact that he's so willing to use all of his fouls kind of hurt his case, but I think Dylan Brooks should have been on this list.
I'm going to go with Clint Capella. And Rachel, I already know what you're going to say, the Hawks. But Clint Capella, what he's done for his team and allowed them to move on. I mean, he was great against with the Knicks. He was great against the Knicks, you know, as far as defensively, getting them in transition and knocking down threes. So where's Clint Capella?
By the way, using all your fouls is part of the game. They let you do that, Monica. I'm just saying.
What it do, baby? Make, miss. It's a make or miss league, baby. That's it.
Hey, when it's it. Make Houdini. Let's start in Philly. Trae Young. Well, not in Philly, but Trae Young driving, finds John Collins in the corner. We showed this earlier. When you see your youngsters, Vince, playing like this, are you so proud?
It's a proud big brother moment. I mean, those guys have played together long enough to where Trae knows where John is, and John is. You see, his hands were already ready because he knew it was coming.
What do you like about this? Right?
The craftiness from Trae, man. I mean, he's elevated on this stage, both as a scorer and a facilitator, easily.
I love this whole thing, because, by the way, John came up with the rebound that kicked this back out and everything to begin with. Teammate makes the dream. Teamwork makes it. I'm done. All right, let's move on. There you go. Miss. Boxing out. Sticking with John Collins. Not just one, but 2 big putbacks for Atlanta in the second half.
Upper room.
Right? So, Monica, if you were the Sixers, like, how do you put a body on him? Because this is, I mean, he did phenomenal, but he was by himself.
I mean, it's the very fundamental thing we learned, like, playing base basketball, right? If you're guarding him, turn, armbar, literally put your butt in his gut. Like, you gotta find this dude. I mean, and honestly, to be fair, he's probably the kind of dude that probably would jump over the box out and then see what happens with the referees making a decision.
You're right about that. And the biggest thing that happens in the NBA game is we ball watch. We see a shot go up, and what do? We go like this.
Oh.
And with a live wire like John Collins, which you should know in the scouting report, he's going to hit the glass.
Amen. All right, make ambition. Bogdanovic out in transition, attempting to put up a shot between Kawhi and PG. Kawhi said, "No, I'm sorry. You will not be doing that." Then should Bogey give him a pump fake next time? I don't know.
Or just dribble out to the three-point line. Right there, you're going in between two guys right there. So I can imagine Kawhi said, "No way, baby."
Very accurate. I want to know who was trailing. Is there a jump stop and a pitch back here? Is there another pass? Because you're trying to go between those two, particularly the way that they're playing defense right now. Bad news Bears.
No. And look, there were a couple games, in the first two games of the series where the defense was not always elite, but it was pretty elite last night. All right, Miss Subtlety. Kawhi driving in. The man doesn't just defend. Derek Favors found out last night he can do this as well. My Lord. And by the way, Vince, he did not yell. He did not do anything. He went. Right?
You see right here, he's going to dunk the ball, look at the basketball, and go about his business.
What would you have done?
Not that. Rev it up, baby.
Rev it up, baby. Let's go.
Our great colleague Ramona Shelburne obviously had the opportunity to talk to Kawhi post-game because she's covering this, and she pointed out that he said after that play, he went down to the other end, and I believe Bogdanovic hit a three, and that's where his mind was. That's why Kawhi's so great, because I, too, would have shut it down with a celebration.
The man does know how to dunk, so we figured why not run it back to his best playoff dunks, 2016. So he keeps Russ on his hip here, and then there you go.
It looked like he picked the ball up off the dribble and just palmed it. Look at that. Pick it up.
By the way, he's outrunning Russell Westbrook, which is a thing.
He makes it look so easy.
Woo. 2019, flying by two Philly defenders for the slam.
Oh, yes.
We know how this series ended, right? Bounce, in.
That was foreshadowing on how the series would end.
Woo.
Right there.
My Lord.
Remember, everybody will talk about the injury and could he still get up?
Yep. Apparently the answer was yes. Yes, he could. 2014, hacking it in on Serge Ibaka.
That's a tough task right
Serge. Business decision. Got to be a business decision, Serge. Don't do that.
I want to time travel and tell 2014 Serge, don't worry, that man's going to help you get a ring 5 years from now.
Right.
There you go.
Right? That would make his night much better, right? And then just last month, we all remember, just detonated Maxi Kleber. I will say Dallas won this game. I think it's always important to point that out. But this still shot was just ridiculous.
Excellent.
And see, I think the emotion is because man down. Man falls down, man hits the basket protection.
This was in 2019. Oh, yes.
Take off.
Woo. On Giannis. This is how this became number one, because it is on Defensive Player of the Year, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
And that's with the left.
Right?
I mean, he looked like left.
The Kyle Lowry setup, though, is pretty elite.
It was, yes.
We got to acknowledge that part.
It's almost
Monica,
like
you said
Kyle
jump stop. You remember you said jump stop. There's the example of the jump stop because pass it back, let Kawhi do what he does.
There you go. I like it.
Did you know, Vince, that Monica played for Georgetown? Have I mentioned that
I do.
600 times on this show?
I already know. I know. Yes, I know. I know all about it.
I'm just going to keep saying that. You know how I feel about the Hoyas. All right, let's stick with Kawhi, but also his teammate Paul George. Last night, PG-13 and Kawhi each dropped 31 in another win at home to even up the series, while a lot of the focus is on PG because he's such an X factor. If he has a great game, it makes a huge difference. You gotta check Kawhi's numbers between wins and losses, because even in losses, he's very, very good. But look at him in wins. The man has been nuclear, averaging nearly 34 points a game on 65, 45, 90 shooting splits. Now in losses again, more human, averaging 26 on 48, 32, 85 shooting splits. But Vince, the Clippers now tied 2-2 after trailing 0-2. So what do you think has changed for them that they are now in it in this series?
I mean, it's easy to say home cooking. That's easy. But I give the credit to Ty Lue for making the adjustment of playing small ball. They worked in game 3, and they started with it in game 4. And here's why I say that. It put Gobert in a situation where he can't get to the help side blocks or in the paint fast enough because he's leaving shooters. And when he did step in the paint, penetrate pitch. Marcus Morris, open three. Batum, open three. So they put him in a situation where Gobert didn't know what to do, and I thought it was genius to start with that. And now it opened the paint up for Kawhi and PG to get into the paint whenever they wanted.
VC, I don't know which one comes first, if it is the offensive decisions in terms of that small ball or what it has allowed them to do defensively, because I've been impressed in the last two games with the way literally the Clippers are flying around defensively 1 through 5. We know that Pat Bev, we know that Paul George and Spots and Kawhi Leonard have made it very difficult on Donovan Mitchell, but in general, there's not been a lapse in terms of their defensive rotations and missing their assignments. And to me, that energy on the defensive end has allowed them to get up and down the floor, out in transition, get to those spots where they're knocking down threes. And so the small ball thing is huge. I'm noticing it on the defensive side of the ball just as much.
Well, look, it is going to be fascinating because the Utah Jazz earned that number 1 seed, right? So Dallas lost the last 4 of the last 5 games in that first round series. The Jazz are not the type of team that has lost 4 out of 5 games this season. So for the Clippers, even though they've gotten back in it, for them to win, they will have to win 4 of the final 5 games of the series. It is a steep hill, but they are starting to climb it. All right, we are going to talk James Harden right after this break because he is now cleared to play tonight. Vince will share his thoughts on the pressure Harden is facing in this pivotal Game 5. Keep it locked.
Ball is intense. It's gritty. It's hard.
And it appears to be the right ankle of Kyrie Irving.
Nets, of course, have had their share of injuries all season long.
We lost a great player during the game. It was a big adjustment tonight to play without him.
Giannis on the slam. Welcome to the playoffs. Both these teams getting after it.
That's typical playoff basketball.
Oh, beautiful feed right through the wicket.
Love the way the guys play. We just got to keep competing.
Giannis up and over the top.
Middleton for 3. Puts it in.
We're very happy, but we got to keep getting better. Hopefully we can go in Brooklyn and take one.
That was one of the more physical playoff games I have been courtside for, and we got another one coming up on Thursday on ESPN. It'll be Game 6 of that series. One of the teams will be on the brink of elimination at that point, a must-watch game. All right, welcome back to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols here with Vince Carter, Monica McNutt, and let's get to the biggest news of the day involving James Harden. Our senior insider, Adrian Wojnarowski, says James is cleared to play in Game 5 against the Bucks tonight. This is huge. Woj reporting Harden worked his hamstring through shoot-around without an issue. He will do the same on the court prior to tip tonight. Vince, this man was ruled out officially yesterday. I got the notice in my email inbox. You have been in James Harden's shoes. What is it like to try to play hurt in such a high-pressure game?
It's the playoffs, and you want to do whatever you can for your team. You just want to be careful, and obviously he knows how important it is. But trying to play through it is difficult. It's difficult because there's some of the things that comes natural to you that you can't do anymore. For me, it was jumping. So for James Harden, he's a point guard. He uses his body, his quickness, and his ability to get in the paint. And you see there, once he got in the paint and stepped, that's when you find out how he actually feels, because you're going through shoot around, you go through everything, but when you have to guard somebody or beat someone off the dribble, that's when that hamstring will be tested.
You know, I applaud James Harden for pushing, and I certainly understand the urgency, guys, but I do wonder, is it absolutely vital? I mean, I think we've gotten lulled to sleep just a little bit on the capabilities of one Kevin Durant, who, although the Elias stats bear out that when teams are missing 2 of their top 3 scorers, they only win like 25% of the time. But if one of those top 3 is Kevin Durant, I think you still have a really strong chance. And so for me, I'm at, okay, James Harden is going to go tonight, but will he be able to play tonight? Are 2 different conversations in terms of the duration and the intensity of the basketball game.
Honestly, to me, what might tip that balance isn't as much whether James Harden is or isn't on the court or how much of James Harden he really is. What is the officiating going to be like? And I want to make this clear, I am not saying will it be fair or unfair for either team. Obviously, there is a range of how games are officiated in terms of physicality. That is what I am talking about. How much are they, quote, letting the guys play versus calling a game tightly? I was courtside for Game 4. I can tell you, They let those guys play. It was one of the
was
more
old school basketball.
physical, old school basketball games I have been at in a long time. So, Vince, I was courtside for your games. Those were rough and tumble games at the beginning of your career. At the end of your career, not quite so much, right? That game on Sunday was an old school basketball game, and that meant that PJ Tucker, who is an old school basketball player, could get in Kevin Durant's airspace, physical space, body space, hip space, ankle space in a way that, frankly, absolutely, Monica, in a way that we did not see earlier in the series. And because of that, it made it very hard for Kevin Durant to win that game on his own once Kyrie went down. So to me, yes, James Harden playing will make a huge difference. Of course, he's James Harden, but I want to see how this game is officiated tonight, because if it is allowed to be physical, which I will tell you, just as a basketball fan, separate from this series, I like physical playoff games. That will make a difference on what Kevin Durant can do if PJ Tucker gets an early couple fouls, right? And whether he has to sit or be away. I will say this, Vince, when we talk about James Harden, his organizational skills on the court, his point guard skills, that is something that was missing really in the games he hasn't played this series. With not a great hamstring, can he still do all of that stuff if he doesn't have to? Does he not have to move as much, but still can he do that kind of thing?
I think early in the game he could facilitate and let that hamstring get warm, get comfortable in live action, and then after that, you just see where you are as a player, and if you can beat a guy off the dribble, and if you just need to spot and shoot, and like Monica said, there's Kevin Durant out there, and he's gonna draw a lot of attention, or because James Harden is who he is, they're going to just sit under him and make make KD beat Tucker one-on-one. Yeah. So the wonderful thing about James Harden is he is good at drawing fouls.
Yes, he is.
So the physicality on them, he can get their team into the penalty early because of his ability to draw fouls. So I think early in the game, he's going to facilitate, get warm, and then we'll see where he goes from there.
But VC, do you think though that the Bucks would game plan for him differently if they knew he was purely a facilitator? Like when I think of James Harden's games, he's able to be such a dynamic facilitator because you got to respect him from 45 feet away from the rim. Right. If he doesn't have his legs and can't score that way, then I can plan for you as a facilitator better than I can for you as a scorer, or just one or the other.
But remember this, James Harden can still shoot the ball. The hammy still work to shoot the ball. You can still shoot. I think with the hamstring more so is just pushing off and beating your man. His step back game, he doesn't need a lot of space. James Harden doesn't use a lot of lift on his shot. That's one of the things, like a Dominique Wilkins, somebody like that who had a lot of lift where the hamstring is into effect. So I mean, it just depends on his pain tolerance is another factor in this, and what he can and can't do. I mean, he's giving it a go. My only thing is I just hope he's healthy enough, and we don't want to see another Anthony Davis situation where he goes down and the Nets do not have him for the rest of the series. Like you said earlier, Monica.
Yeah, and look, we did see that with AD, right? And these injuries are connected. So AD had an Achilles injury, obviously all the way back on Valentine's Day, took a big chunk of time off, tried to come back. He had hip injuries, thigh injuries, sort of, little nagging things, ankle, right, at one point. So obviously, when that side of your body is a little bit weakened, you can see with James Harden, are we going to have other sort of compensatory injuries that come into play for him? I will say this about James. The man is an Iron Man. He has played, we looked it up today, our researcher Michael Schwartz, 94% of the games that his team has played over the course of his career, whatever team he has been on, he has played in. Marvel did a shoe collab with him because he's such an Iron Man. This is a man who wants to be on the court, and I do admire the fact he is trying to be there tonight, and he obviously knows, not just for the Brooklyn Nets, but for him. I mean, he's been trying to win a title for a very long time. This is probably one of his best chances to do so. He wants to help them get past this series. We will find out if he is going to be able to. It is time, friends, to play one of our favorite games here on The Jump. Something, nothing, or everything. Let's get to another story from Woj. This is about the league exploring rule changes on unnatural shot motions. All right, so per Woj, the league wants to limit the ability of players, including stars like, James Harden, Luka Doncic, Trae Young, to lean backward and sideways, for example, to initiate contact and get the free throw. Monica, Trae Young has been one of the brightest stars of this playoffs. Luka Doncic put on a show in the first round. Is this something, nothing, or everything?
It's everything, Rachel, and I mean that in the most negative way. I absolutely hate this. Like, I hate it. I don't know about you, VC, but I feel like you're now encroaching on guys' ability to play the game and be crafty. Listen, I was up close and personal to the Knicks-Hawks series. Yes. I was just as agitated as anybody else with Trae Young, but that is a part of his game. And all the names that you just listed, Rachel, they are great players, and that's part of their game. I was with the league on the kick out. Okay, take that out. I was with them on the Zaza Pachulia rule. I was with that. But this, to me, only opens Pandora's box with more subjectivity. I thought the point of these rules at this point, as we saw with Nikola Jokic being ejected, was to eliminate the subjectivity. Right. This, to me, is going to be a hot mess.
And what it's going to do to these scores or those guys that you listed, they're going to have to figure out another way to be effective as far as drawing fouls, because Trae knows if I speed up on the pick and roll and just slow down, when that defender's getting there, stop. And then throw the ball to the rim. Right. And it's. I mean, you look at it, and I'm with these guys, and so I root for them. But when you see it, you're just like, oh man, come on, man. It kind of takes the fun out of the game because they're superstars and they're already tough to guard, and it's impossible as a defender to try to guard these guys when that's allowed. So at least if they get the call, it has to go on the side.
Well, it's interesting, Monica, you just called that the Zaza Pachulia rule. We all know why of what happened a few years ago. I have to assume if this goes through, it will be called the Trae Young rule, or at least referred to it that way. And I think it's notable just because Trae is the one I think who'd be most effective. He's the smaller guy. And by the way, he's not small. I'm 5'4". I'm small. But he is smaller on that court. And so he has to do more things to sort of make his game break through than a bigger guy like James Harden or Luka Doncic is a lot bigger than I think people realize when he's on the basketball court and can barrel through. I am curious whether this is going to be, hey, we just won't call the fouls anymore, and so they won't have that and get to the free throw line, or if it is we are going to start calling these as offensive fouls, and they will be fouls on the offensive player. I don't know if that's been clarified or not, but obviously that would have a huge impact on which way they decide.